So it has been a fucked up couple weeks in America, to say the least. Just a few days ago, we watched the second murder in cold blood of an American citizen by ICE agents in Minnesota, America's nicest state. I mean, I could understand murdering a California asshole like me, but a Minnesotan? They're good people. Alex Preddy was an ICU nurse who worked with veterans, and he was killed for simply filming ICE agents as they attacked a woman in front of him and then offering to help her. And you know, it's been beyond horrifying to watch our government oppress and murder innocent people, immigrants, even its own citizens, to see it tear families apart and kidnap children, and to know that the cruelest, stupidest, most pathetic wieners on earth. You know what, can we get a photo of JD Vance up there? Thank you. Like I said, to know that the cruelest, stupidest, most pathetic wieners on earth are in power and are cheering for this mayhem while it happens. I spent most of last Sunday lying flat on my back, catatonically doom scrolling for hours. And as the rest of the week started to unfold, I actually started to get kind of weirdly hopeful, because I think the events of the last week demonstrate, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that the American people do not want what is happening. And the result of that is a moment of genuine weakness for the Trump administration. And look, I'll be honest, I haven't made a video about politics in a couple months because I've been struggling with how to talk about what the Trump administration has been doing. Because, I know that what they're doing is wrong. You know that what they're doing is wrong. The majority of this country knows that it's wrong. But for a while, it hasn't felt like it matters what's right or wrong. It hasn't felt like anything could change in this country, regardless of the morality or the justice or basic human decency. But as the past week went on, it started to become clear that Trump and the rest of the right wing have severely overplayed their hand, and that their oppressive policies are finally blowing up in their own faces in a way that no one can ignore. And that's because the people of this country, and the nice people of Minnesota specifically, have been rising up and starting to fight back. And that is a fight that we can win. Now, I'm going to do my plugs really quick because I just want to get to this story. I'm going to be in Louisville, Kentucky this weekend, Houston, Texas, February 12th through 14th, San Francisco, February 19th through 21st, La Jolla, California, April 10th through 12th. You can get all those tickets at adamconover.net. And if you want to support this channel and the people who help me make these videos, head to patreon.com/adamconover. So look, even from the beginning of Trump's so-called crackdown on immigration, it was all obviously based on a ludicrous, impossible lie. During his campaign, Trump vowed to deport 20 million people. And as we have covered before on this channel, that's not just morally reprehensible, it's literally impossible. 20 million people is more than 5% of the US population. It's almost 2 Ohio's worth of human beings. Even if you could round up and transport that number of people, what country would agree to take them? And look, Trump is literally so famous for lying that there is a Wikipedia article dedicated to it, but this was a promise his base actually wanted to see carried out because, they have hate in their hearts and they want to see the people who they hate suffer. So since he couldn't literally brutalize or remove that many people, Trump decided to sate his followers' bloodlust by creating violent content of him brutalizing and oppressing innocent people. The Trump administration staffed up ICE with gangs of barely trained domestic abusers, armed them with giant guns and camera phones, and then sent them to rough up brown people and Democrats for the gram. The thing you have to realize about ICE is that it's all an optics and trolling operation. They're basically Kim Kardashian hawking tummy tea, except that it's the federal government and racism. ICE spent last year kidnapping people all across the country from coast to coast, detaining US citizens and letting people die under mysterious circumstances in custody. But then, at the end of last year, he saw an opportunity to make it far worse and to attack his political enemies. See, a story ran in the New York Times about widespread fraud in Minnesota's COVID response. And, a lot of states had fraud in their COVID responses. But in this case, because many of the fraudsters were Somali immigrants, and it happened under the administration of Tim Walz, Trump saw the case as a social media ratings bonanza and an opportunity to attack both immigrants, who his base hates, and Democrats, who they might hate even more. So Trump sent an enormous force of ICE agents to Minnesota to rough up the local population and create chaos that would look bad for the Democrats in charge. Let's just dwell on this for a second. Did he send the ICE agents to Minnesota because they have the most undocumented immigrants? No, if he wanted to do that, he'd have ICE march on Texas or Mar-a-Lago. But he wouldn't send ICE to harass those places. That's where he and his friends live. Instead, Trump focused on Minneapolis because it votes blue by a lot. And since he and his base hate people who vote blue, he thought they could all derive joy and political power by physically attacking them with the power of the federal government. That's it. It's as clear a case of using the power of the state to attack one's political enemies as you can possibly find. And that's, part of the textbook definition of fascism. And Trump did all of this for the content. He even deployed Greg Bovino, a short little man who literally dresses like a Nazi to troll the libs. This guy is so little, he looks like a Gestapo guinea pig. But it turns out that by attacking Minnesota, Trump actually made a strategic error, because Minnesota happens to be home to one of the best organized progressive political cultures in America. Minnesotans are fucking badasses, okay? No matter how the right may portray them, they're caring people who look out for their neighbors, show up, and are proud of their diversity. And Minnesotans said, with their diverse voices, all in unison, that. The people of Minneapolis started using neighborhood signal chats to alert each other to ICE sightings. They organized grocery deliveries for neighbors who couldn't leave their homes for fear of being kidnapped by ICE. And they took to the streets in massive numbers to protest. And during those protests, Somali Americans, who have been relentlessly slandered by ICE and Trump as bloodthirsty criminals, brought tea and snacks to the protesters. That's unity, baby. So think for a second about what Trump did here. He literally sent some of the stupidest, most untrained federal agents in American history behind enemy lines to rough up a community of people who were begging for the chance to fight back against his policies peacefully and hilariously. Hell, even the weather was fighting back.
Our tax money pays for
But, beyond the icy winter, there was one tactic that Minnesotans employed that was overwhelmingly effective. They began legally following, observing, and filming ICE agents to help inform the families of people who were taken by ICE of what happened to their loved ones, and to share what was happening in their city with the world. And the federal government, led by Donald Trump, responded to this very effective, completely legal strategy by murdering them. First, ICE agents killed Renee Good, a poet, mother, and former Christian missionary. And when bystander video of that murder made it completely clear that Good was not a threat to the agents and was in fact trying to leave the scene at the moment they murdered her, the Trump administration doubled down.
If you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground.
Yeah, Renee Good fits the definition of a domestic terrorist about as well as J.D. Vance fits into his pants. But the right-wing media repeated this ridiculous claim as gospel. If you want to see for yourself, check out these articles I found on this video's sponsor, Ground News. Look at these headlines about the shooting of Renee Good. While Reuters, a center-leaning, highly reliable news source, described the event as U.S. immigration agent fatally shoots woman in Minneapolis, mayor disputes government claim of self-defense, Fox News went with woman in Minneapolis shot and killed by ICE agent after alleged car ramming attack, DHS says. That means Ground News is really helpful when you're trying to understand how media sources like these affect people's twisted understanding of reality. Because you can also use Ground News to see how much coverage a particular news story is getting or not getting, and who is in what information bubble. Like, for instance, when polling found that most Americans were not buying Noam's line and felt that the shooting of Renee Good was not justified, with Ground News, you can see that only 13% of right-leaning sources covered that story at all. They basically kept the truth from their readers in order to preserve the illusion. Now look, we all have blind spots. The important thing, though, if you want to actually understand what's happening in the world, is to check the information you're getting against multiple sources to make sure you are getting the real story. And that's part of why Ground News includes bias and factuality ratings for every source. So if you want to join me in using Ground News to think critically about the media we're all consuming, you can get 40% off if you use my special code FACTUALLY. Go to groundnews.com/factually. So the Trump administration, aided by the right-wing media, tried its best to slander Renee Good, an average American mom who was trying to help the people in her community and everyone else who stood up to ICE, as domestic terrorists. And that might have convinced their followers who drink the Kool-Aid. But did it stop the regular people of Minnesota from fighting back? No, it only made their protests and neighborhood defense louder. In fact, on Saturday, Minnesota even led America's first citywide general strike in 80 years. This is a radical tactic that hasn't been used in the labor movement in America in almost a century, and Minnesotans put it together in a matter of days, with tens of thousands of people marching through Minneapolis in below freezing weather. Well, guess what? This wanton display of care for one another so incensed the Border Patrol that the next day they killed another Minnesotan, Alex Preddy. Alex, again, was an ICU nurse who treats veterans at the VA, and he was filming ICE agents as they shoved two civilians to the ground. And furious to be caught on camera, the ICE agents pepper sprayed Alex, pinned him to the ground, beat the shit out of him, and shot him in the back. Now, I don't think I even need to tell you why this was unconstitutional, illegal, and in violation of every value we hold about due process and the respect for human life. You know in your gut that that's wrong. Everyone does. And that, in fact, is why the agents did it. Their goal in doing something so reprehensible, so visibly, without any repercussion whatsoever, is to make you afraid, to make you feel that the rule of law does not protect you, to try to convince you that they can kill you too if you dare to disobey. And when that's the only part of the story that you know or get to see, it's easy to get lost in despair, to get quiet, to live in fear, to lie on your couch and doom scroll. But that's not what Minnesotans are doing. They are continuing to fight back in larger and larger numbers, literally putting their lives at risk by continuing to protest, continuing to record the movements of ICE agents, continuing to protect one another. It is incredibly inspiring to watch this kind of bravery, and it is working. Because now the American people at large, across the country, at least the ones who aren't trapped in the Fox News cinematic universe, know that this is wrong because they are getting to see it and they are seeing each other fight back. And they know that they cannot let the Trump administration gaslight them into believing otherwise. At this point, the reaction to these murders has been so massive, it's all anyone in this country has been talking about for days. I mean, sure, you expect Bruce Springsteen to make a statement, but even Martha fucking Stewart has spoken out. Hatred of ICE is so widespread, it's even crossing over to spaces that were once completely apolitical. An anti-ICE post is now the #1 post of all time in r/cat bongos, an 800,000 person subreddit about using your cat's butt as a drum. And you know what's even better? This prompted a bunch of other people to reply with anti-ICE cat butt songs.
So the comrades come rally, for the struggle carries on. The internationally unites the world in bong.
Man, the last time a cat's butt made me feel this patriotic, it was when I got toxoplasmosis madness from cleaning the litter box. I mean, the public response has been so massive, it's now threatening the popularity and even the legitimacy of the entire Trump administration. Immigration used to be their highest polling issue, but after Preddy's death, more than half of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of immigration. And you know, we're used to politicians in this country being completely impervious to widespread public opinion on issues of all types, but we are now starting to see a response from our political system, incredibly. The cowardly and disgusting Democratic lawmakers who just voted to continue funding ICE despite these killings, well, they have started desperately backpedaling. And even Republican lawmakers are starting to lose it. When Republican Senator Tom Tillis was asked about Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem, he said this:
"We should own the issue of border security and immigration, but they have destroyed that for Republicans. Something that got the president elected, they have destroyed it through their incompetence."
Even the living Nosferatu, Stephen Miller himself, is freaking out. He's made a complete 180 after calling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist and started saying that federal agents may not have been following protocol. Oh, you think, buddy? And a few days ago, the Trump administration actually fired Greg Bovino, who was the head of the DHS operation in Minneapolis. Oh, maybe now Greg has time to find a haircut that doesn't make him look like Colonel Lockjaw. Man, I never thought it was possible to be more repulsive than Sean Penn, but here you go. But I'm not sure the Trump administration has really internalized how the public feels about this issue, because the guy who's replacing Bavino is Tom Homan, and he literally just said this.
We're going to create a database where those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV.
Now, yeah, that's fascist as hell, but it's also really fucking stupid, because are they trying to make the protesters seem even more rad and awesome? I mean, do you remember what happened when they put Luigi's face on TV? Now look, we have to remember that a shift in public opinion is not by itself enough, nor are any of the rest of these last-minute changes or flailing by the Trump administration. Because for every protester who's been visibly harassed or killed by ICE, there are hundreds or thousands of people whose suffering and death at the hands of ICE remains largely invisible to us. In the week before Alex Preddy was murdered, 88 people were kidnapped in Southern California alone. The 5-year-old boy with a Spider-Man backpack who was used as bait by ICE is still being held in a makeshift jail thousands of miles away from his home, as are countless of other children right at this very moment. And tens of thousands of people remain in ICE custody, where they face medical neglect, physical and sexual abuse, and even death. This is happening to real people in our country right now. But as devastating and heartbreaking as that is, I think we have to take this moment to acknowledge how far we have come, how far the pendulum has already swung back. A year ago, after Trump was inaugurated, I made a video about how no one is coming to save us from fascism. I said at the end of that video that we're going to have to save ourselves. And you know what? That is what we are doing. The people of Minneapolis are proving that. They are proving that we are not powerless and that we can fight back to save each other, ourselves, and our country. And look, it is clear at this point that America is not the democracy we were told it was in middle school civics class, that the American dream was in many ways a lie that was sold to us. But you know what? Americans did in fact sit in those civics classes. We were in fact told that lie, and we do still believe as a people in that dream, the dream of the America that could be, the dream of the America that we expect to live in. And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing that our constitutional rights have been vaporized to some extent, because it has reminded us that we need to fight for those rights, not to just demand them, but to seize them with our own hands and to say, fuck you to anyone who tries to stand in our way. The rage and hope of the American people is the last and strongest, and you know what was always the only check on fascism. So the next time someone tries to tell you that it's too late, that fascism is inevitable, and they're just going to cancel elections and America is over, remember that we, the people, have something to say about it, and that united, we can never be defeated. And you can join in on that. You can be a part of that unity. And you don't do it by lying flat on your back, catatonically doom-scrolling Mark Zuckerberg's fear prison. You do it by getting out in the street with your friends, family, and neighbors. Today, the day this video releases, January 30th, is a national day of action. People across the country are refusing to go to work or spend money today, and you can join them. There are tons of protests around the country. If you're in Louisville, I'll fucking see you in the streets, because that's where I'll be. You can take a training to learn how to legally document what ICE is doing in your community. There are so many ways for you to participate and be a part of the change you want to fucking see in this country, because these losers want us to believe that their fascist takeover is inevitable, that Americans are mean, that we don't care about each other, that we can't show up for each other, that all we can do is stay home and watch their bullshit on television. They want you to feel as small as they feel. They want you to feel as drained as they feel. They want you to feel as squeezed as they feel. But the people of Minnesota have shown us that we don't have to be.